Welcome back to the CQC video training series. This is a spot topic video on CQC expressions. In this video, we're going to look at CQC expressions. And expressions are something that are used in quite a few places within CQC, so it's good to get to know them. And what they do is they take some sort of source value, typically a field, in some cases a variable, and they make a decision on the current value of that source, and then they spit out a true or false result, and that is interpreted however is appropriate. True, false, all phone, secure, not secure, whatever is appropriate for the particular circumstance. And they are used obviously to allow you to inform CQC that you want something to happen or not happen, or display or not display, depending on the value of that source. They're commonly used in the user interface system and also some other places like the logic server and so forth. So we're going to just look at some in the context of the user interface system. Instead of just creating a sample template on the fly, in this case, I'm just going to use the auto-generated templates, which are here. And there are a set of videos about how you generate these if you want to go watch those. These are just templates that we can spit out based on some configuration to make things easier for you to get started. And what we're going to do is just find some widgets that use expressions and show them, show what they do here, which will probably make more sense. You kind of see them in context. So there are one set of widgets that are what we'd call Boolean widgets, and they all take an expression that tells them to do one thing or another, display one thing or another. A very common one would be something like this light here, which is a Boolean image driven by a field. And if it displays one image or another, so if I turn the light on, it displays this image because it's now true. And if I turn it off, it displays this image. So let's take a look at that one. And I've got the output directory here of my AutoGen stuff that I was using in the auto generation video. And in this case, this is the tiles video, the main tiles guy. And it has all of that content on it there. So it's this one here. And these are all grouped together, so if I click one of them, I get all of them, but I can control click this to select this guy. And if you look down at the bottom, it says it's a filled Boolean image. And if we go look at the attributes over here, we can see that we have to select a state field, and this is our source value, and it drives the true false state. And it is in the lighting driver, and it's just the kitchen table light switch. So it's a Boolean field itself, true or false. And now if we look here, we see that there are two expressions. I won't get into why there are two. That's described in the written documentation. In almost all cases, you really only need the true one. So let's click here to bring up the expression editor. And this is what it looks like. And there's one other variation that you might see in some cases where you actually select the source field here, because it's not already selected somewhere else, but otherwise it's the same. It has a description, which is for your purposes. It's just set to true by default here, but you can change this to remind yourself what this is doing if you need to. And then it has an expression type, of which there are a number. We'll talk about these a little bit more once we've demonstrated some of them. So in this case, it's just set to is true, which is appropriate for our field because it's Boolean. So all we need to do is just check, is it true? And if it is, then this expression becomes true. Otherwise, this expression becomes false. And if it is needed, there is a comparison value. Is true doesn't, because all it's doing is looking at the source value. If we were to pick, say, is equal, then we need something to compare the source value to. But in our case, that's not required. So that's a very common scenario, just to display one bit of text or another, or one image or another. And we can just look at how that works here. Oh, we already did. So yeah, so just off and on. So let's look at another variation maybe, which would be maybe in the music. So let me click here and load some music. I'll load an album, add it to the queue. And now we can go to now playing. And here's another example here, which is a checkbox, which is driven by a field. In this case, what it does is it displays one image or another, and when you click it, it can toggle the underlying field. So let's look at that guy. So that would be music playing. Go down here. So it is a checkbox driven by a field. If I come over here to the attributes, we again have to select a state field. In this case, it's the music renderer driver's mute field. Right? So we're toggling the mute here basically. And if we look at the expression, it's very similar in that it's just checking, is the mute state currently true or not? The mute field is a Boolean field, so that's all we really need. And what will happen is if we double click it, we can get the actions here. So it has 2 action events. So if you click it when it's true, it calls this on true click. And what we're doing is just writing it to false. If we click it and it's in false state, it calls this one, and we're just setting it to true. So basically we're just toggling the state of it. So this is a very common thing. So if we go over here and we click this, you can see the toggles, and now it's in mute state. And if we undo it, now it's in unmuted state. So that's also very common. All right, let's look at another variation here. I think I did one I was demonstrating how you do some custom layout, and I did a floor plan type of custom layout that you can add to the auto-generated content. And that's here. This is just barely filled out. I didn't want to obviously do this whole thing just for the demonstration video, so I just did a light and a security zone, but this is a good one to look at here. If we look at that, we can see that it is down at the bottom a field animated image. So it uses an expression to decide whether it should animate or not. And what we're going to do is we want it to not do anything as long as it's secure, but once it becomes insecure in some way, we want this guy to start blinking. All right, so once again, we need a field. In this case, it's the start stop field. It's what tells us whether we should animate or not. And it is it's a security zone status for the kitchen window. And if we click the true expression, we can see in this case it's using not equal. So basically, if the security zone state is not equal, then we want it to start animating. Otherwise, it won't do anything. It doesn't display anything at all because there's nothing to see. So it only shows anything once it is in a not secure state. And also, you can see here that, of course, it enabled the comparison value because we need one now. And if it's field-based, you can click this and you can select values interactively. You don't have to remember what they are, which is very convenient. So that's another very common scenario. And let's just look at, while we're here, let's just talk about some of these other types. Irregular expressions are very useful. If you don't know about regular expressions, go look those up. We support just the basic types of regular expressions. So for instance, if not that we would do this, but if we wanted to say it is either secure or not ready, we could do that. So that would say that this particular one is true if the value is either secure or not ready, right? Because a regular expression, this little guy means one or the other. So if it's either of these values, it would do it. So regular expressions can often be kind of a lifesaver here to be able to get slightly more complex decision making. And of course, you could also negate the result of a regular expression if it's easier to come up with a regular expression that expresses the opposite state of what you want, as we previously discussed. There is equal and not equal. These are true and false. So similar to what we've already seen, is the field true, is the field false. We have numeric comparisons, greater than, equal, less than, equal. So these take a numeric field and you provide a comparison value with it. It has to be a number, and it will compare them. And the expression is true if this particular relationship is true. Non-null means that either it's a number and it's non-zero, or it's a text value and it's not empty. So that can be useful in some cases. Negative and positive. So if you had a signed value that could go from below 0 to above 0, and you wanted to only do something or display something if it was either negative or positive, you can do that. You can check for a numeric value being even or odd. And of course, these all don't need any comparison value. They're just looking at the source value. You can say, is it a number that is a multiple of this other number? So you provide the number to check. And you can say, is it only alphabetic characters? Is it only alphabetic characters and numbers? Right. So that's often convenient as well. That is basically expressions in a nutshell. Like I said, you'll see them in various places, but they all work the same. They're all basically taking a source value, setting up an expression that evaluates it, and then that becomes a true or false result that's used in some way. If you go look at the logic server videos, you will see that they are used there in a number of places as well to evaluate source fields that then feed into a new pseudo field that the logic server creates for you. And that's a good way to combine the values of fields into some composite useful value. There we go. That is it, and we will see you in the next video.